My name is Lauren Mitchell, and I never thought the day my own mother would hand me over to the police would come so quickly. Just a few hours earlier, I had been bringing flowers and gifts back home to celebrate my grandmother's birthday. And now, here I was, standing behind the police station, my wrists marked from the cuffs, accused of embezzling $80,000, a sum I had never even touched. Have you ever had the person who gave you life turn their back on you and try to destroy you completely? If this story touches a familiar wound in you, leave a comment, hit the like button, and subscribe to my channel so we can walk together through this journey that's both dark and liberating. Because that night, I uncovered a truth even crueler than what I was already facing. I grew up in Salem, Oregon, a quiet town with blazing red maple trees in the fall and winding little streets lined with old steep-roofed houses. But inside our two-story home, the air was never as peaceful as it looked from the outside. My mother, Patricia, had a gift for words, always knowing exactly what to say to make the neighbors believe she was a devoted, loving parent. But I knew better. That love was reserved only for Ethan, my younger brother, 5 years my junior. From the moment Ethan was born, every bit of attention, affection, and money in the family tilted toward him. I remember one summer afternoon when I was 12, bent over pulling weeds in the yard, and overheard Mom talking to Mrs. Johnson over the fence. "That Lauren." Mom gave a faint laugh. "She's smart, sure, but not practical enough to make it in a big city. Best if she stays close to home and finds something stable to do." I froze, weeds still clutched in my hand. At 12, I already knew those words weren't concern. They were a period at the end of any hopes she had for me. Ethan was different. His room was painted the blue he liked, with an expensive wooden bed and new bedding every season. On his birthdays, Mom threw big parties and invited the whole neighborhood, with cakes custom-made from the most popular bakery in town. When I turned 13, my gift was a wool sweater Mom said would help you look more put together for school. In my teen years, I was essentially trained to serve the family. Every morning I got up early to cook breakfast for everyone, make the beds, wash the dishes, and only then could I eat. Ethan could sleep in, leave his dirty clothes piled on the floor, and Mom would just laugh it off. "He's a boy," she'd say. "Let him enjoy his childhood." I once asked Mom why things were so different, but her answer was always the same. "You're the older sister. You have to set an example. Ethan's still young. He needs encouragement." Back then, I didn't have the words to describe the injustice. But over time, those small fragments of hurt built up into a heavy weight I carried every day. I still tried to earn her approval through achievement. In 9th grade, I won first place in the state essay competition. Mom took the certificate from my hand, nodded, and set it on a shelf, right next to the Lego set Ethan had just finished. When Ethan was 10, Mom bought him a nearly $500 mountain bike. That same year, at 15, I wanted a pair of running shoes to join the track team. "Your old ones still work fine," she said. "No need to get fancy." Have you ever seen all the love poured into one child, while the other is assumed to be strong enough to manage alone? That's how I lived my entire childhood. And sometimes I wondered, if I had been weaker, would Mom have seen me differently? On winter evenings, I often sat alone by my bedroom window, watching the streetlights spill onto the snow. From the living room came the sound of the TV and Mom and Ethan's laughter. The door between us was never locked, but I knew I didn't belong in that world. When I was 17, one of my teachers called Mom to the school to congratulate me on earning a full scholarship to study law at the University of Washington. I still remember her surprised look. On the drive home, she said, "Well, that's good, but don't forget, grades alone won't pay your bills." That was it. No hug, no "I'm proud of you." I began to understand that whatever affection she had for me came with conditions and limits. But I didn't realize that was only the prelude to what she'd do later. Even after I tried to step out from under my family's shadow, Mom's control still followed me. I started working my senior year of high school, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted my own money. Tips from waiting tables at a diner, cleaning the library, or selling in a small shop all went into a wooden box I hid under my bed. Mom never asked what I needed from that money. She just said, "Save it. You'll need it someday." But whenever Ethan wanted something, no matter how expensive, she found a way to get it. I watched her dip into her savings to buy him a new gaming computer, while I was still typing essays on a 3-year-old hand-me-down laptop. When I was 18, I learned what it felt like to be betrayed by the person who gave you life. Mom told me that to make my move to Seattle easier, she'd help me take out a $25,000 loan in my name. She said it was a safety net to cover dorm fees and living expenses for my first year. I believed her. But a week after the loan was disbursed, the money vanished from the account. Mom said she had invested it for the family's benefit. I later found out she used it to buy Ethan a vacation cabin on the edge of the woods. When I called to ask, her voice was ice. "That cabin is part of the family. Ethan needs a place to relax and create. And you? You can still study, you can still get by." I didn't argue. I just hung up, quietly packed my clothes and papers, and got ready to leave for Seattle. In that moment, I knew I'd have to rely on no one but myself. But I didn't know this was just the start of years of betrayal, until one day, everything would blow up in a way no one expected. I arrived in Seattle with one suitcase of clothes, a dying old laptop, and a determination not to let anyone crush my future. My first year at the University of Washington, I studied and worked non-stop, juggling every expense. I'd thought that $25,000 loan would be my lifeline. But the longer I stayed in the dorm, the clearer it became. I would never see a penny of it. Rent, food, books, all paid for from my part-time jobs. One November night, balancing my expense ledger, I called Mom to ask about the money. Her voice was calm but firm. "Don't worry. I've used it for something that benefits the family. In a few years, you'll see the value. You've already spent it." Asked, my heart pounding. "Yes. The new cabin in the woods is for all of us. Ethan needs a place to relax and be creative. You can still study. You can still work." I was silent for a long time. On the other end, she kept talking about repainting the cabin, buying a pool table for Ethan, planting red maples outside the porch. The more I listened, the more a mix of bitterness, hurt, and cold settled inside me. The loan in my name, the monthly interest I had to pay. Yet it was all for my brother's comfort. That night, lying in my small dorm room, staring at the ceiling stained with shadows from the light, I felt like my future had been taken from me. Seattle was rainy that winter. Every morning I put on a raincoat, stepped over puddles to work the morning shift at the library, then headed straight to the coffee shop on the corner for my evening shift. Between jobs, I squeezed in classes, then came back to my dorm around 10 p.m., exhausted but still reviewing my notes. Even so, I kept my grades nearly perfect. Partly because I believed only academic excellence could free me from Mom's control, partly because I wanted to prove I could stand without Ethan's privileges. Ethan's life was different. Sometimes I saw his posts online, holding cocktails at friends' birthday parties, driving a brand new pickup, sitting at a huge gaming desk. Every time, I wondered if he had any idea the money for those things was a debt hanging over me. One spring break in my sophomore year, I went home. Ethan's new cabin was a 30-minute drive from town. Mom took me there, beaming as if showing off a major achievement. "See, isn't it beautiful? Now our whole family has a place to gather and relax." It was painted pale blue, with a wooden balcony overlooking the lake. But instead of pride, I felt sick. "You bought it with a loan in my name. Remember, don't make it sound so harsh. This is family property. But I'm the one paying it off." Her smile faded. "Lauren, why are you always so hung up on money? Family is about sharing, not keeping score. I swallowed the rest of my words. I knew if I pushed, she'd only accuse me of being selfish. As time passed, the interest on my student loan piled higher. I applied for more hours at the coffee shop, took weekend shifts bussing tables and mopping floors. My hands always smelled of coffee and cleaning chemicals, but I didn't complain. One evening while washing mugs, my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. "Hey, the cabin's plumbing needs fixing. Mom says you can front the money for now." I laughed, a short, dry sound. "Ethan, do you know who's paying off the loan that bought that cabin?"
Me.
"And I haven't even spent a single night there." "Oh, come on, don't make a big deal. It's a family matter."
Family.
That word felt like a dull blade cutting into me every time they used it to justify taking away the fruits of my labor. I decided to dig into all the loan records. At the university's finance office, I requested a copy of the contract. Sitting at the reading table, my hands trembled when I saw my signature under the line for borrower, but the date and signing location didn't match the time I remembered at all. "This date?" I asked the staff member. How could I have signed when I was in Seattle that day? But the signing location is an attorney's office in Salem. The staff member frowned. "If that's the case, you should contact the bank and a lawyer immediately." I photographed every page. For the first time in years, a surge of anger flared up in me, strong enough to push past my fear of my mother. When I confronted her over the phone, she neither denied nor expressed any regret. "You already agreed. I was never at that law office, and you know it. It's done now, what's the point of arguing? That cabin's value will go up, and you'll benefit from it." I bit my lip until I tasted blood. I don't want profit from something built on a loan forged in my name. She went quiet for a few seconds, then sighed. "Lauren, why do you always have to go against your mother?" "Go against her." She made it sound like everything I did was betrayal. But to me, it was self-preservation. In the days that followed, I started reading articles and court cases about forged signatures and financial abuse within families. I realized I wasn't alone. So many people had been exploited by those closest to them. If you've been through something like this, share your story. You never know, telling it might help someone out there find the strength to stand up for themselves. That summer break, I didn't return to Salem. I took an internship at a small law firm specializing in financial abuse cases. Working there, I learned how to analyze contracts, find legal loopholes, and protect clients in court. Every case I handled helped me better understand what I was facing in my own family. One afternoon, while organizing files, I received an email from the bank. The cabin was co-owned by my mother and Ethan, but the loan was in my name alone. It was the perfect proof of what I had long suspected. I printed it out, clipped it into a thick folder, and locked it in my desk drawer. This time, I wouldn't let everything slide into silence like before. That night, rain tapped softly against the roof. I sat by the window, looking down at the street with a mug of hot tea in hand. Each drop of rain felt like it was marking the beat of my renewed resolve. I knew the road ahead would be full of collisions and pain. But at least I had begun to face the truth, that to protect myself, I would have to stand against my mother, even if it meant losing what I had always called family. In my final fall semester of college, Seattle began to change colors. The maple trees lining the campus gates turned gold and red, their leaves scattering across the stone pathways. I had just finished my summer internship at the small law firm. My first real chance to work with actual cases, real people, and stories I never imagined would connect to my own. I decided to stay in Seattle after graduation. At first, I worked on contract, helping prepare files for clients who had been financially exploited by relatives or partners. No one knew why I chose this field, and I didn't tell them. But every time I read a new case file, seeing the drained accounts, the forged signatures, I saw a part of myself in them. 3 years later, I had enough experience and my own clients to consider opening my own office. I rented a small space on the third floor of an old building, just 2 rooms and a reception desk. The day I put up the sign that read, Mitchell Law, Protecting Your Financial Rights, I stood there for a long time, feeling as though I had just made a promise to myself. I would never let anyone else go through what I had endured. One February morning, while reorganizing my file cabinet, the doorbell rang. The receptionist said a new client had come for a consultation. I stepped out and froze. The woman walking in was Clara Roberts, my mother's close friend from when I was a child. Clara had been the adult I could talk to more freely than my own mother. She'd sneak me a few coins for ice cream, ask about school. But I hadn't seen her in years, not since I'd left for Seattle. Now, Clara stood in front of me looking tired, dark circles under her eyes, clutching an old handbag. "Lauren, is that really you?" Her voice trembled. "I heard you're a lawyer now, specializing in family and money matters." "Yes, please sit down. Tell me everything, I'm here to listen." She opened her bag and pulled out a stack of documents: bank statements, a retirement fund withdrawal agreement, and overdue debt notices. Just the first few pages made my stomach drop. Her husband had secretly withdrawn all her retirement savings, transferred them into his own account, and spent them, leaving her with heavy debt and a house about to be foreclosed. I flipped through each page, studying the signatures. Then my heart sank when I spotted one as a witness signature. My mother's, Patricia Mitchell. The date was more than 2 years ago. Did my mother know about this? I asked slowly, keeping my voice steady. Clara avoided my eyes. I think she did. In fact, your mother introduced my husband to a so-called financial advisor to help him manage his money more effectively. I closed the file, taking a deep breath. Memories flooded back. Ethan's cabin, the loan in my name. My mother hadn't just done this to me. "Do you want me to take this case?" "Yes, if you can." "I trust you, Lauren." He nodded. "I'll do everything I can." In the weeks that followed, I dove into the investigation. Tracing the transactions, I discovered the financial advisor was actually an unlicensed broker who had been sued for fraud before. And my mother not only knew him, she received referral commissions from sending clients his way, including Clara's husband. I remember one night, staring at a spreadsheet of the missing funds. Every number felt like a knife, reminding me that my mother didn't hesitate to facilitate these schemes as long as she profited. I didn't want to call her, but the law required me to verify some details. The call was brief and tense. "Do you remember Clara Roberts's case?" She began. "Why are you asking?" Her voice cautious. "Your name is on the retirement fund withdrawal papers for her husband." "Oh. Yes, I just signed as a witness. They're friends, I was just helping." "Helping or taking a referral fee?" She paused for a few seconds before saying, "Lauren, what are you implying?" I didn't do anything wrong. I wanted to say 100 things, to remind her of all the times she said, "I didn't do anything wrong," while I bore the cost. But I stopped, knowing that arguing would only make her more defensive. "I just need you to confirm your statement so the legal process isn't delayed." "Whatever. But don't drag me into your mess." I hung up, my chest cold. To her, helping Clara avoid losing everything was just my mess. Clara's hearing was held on a cloudy morning. I stood beside her in the small courtroom, clearly presenting the evidence of fraud, including the unlicensed broker's illegal earnings. The court voided the contract, ordered partial restitution to Clara, and fined the broker. When the ruling came down, Clara squeezed my hand, tears streaming. "You saved me, Lauren." I just smiled, but inside, the victory felt both satisfying and bitter. This case wasn't just a professional win. It was proof my mother had gone far beyond what I once thought was only within our family. My office began getting more clients, mostly through referrals. The stories I heard each day had the same thread: trust betrayed, often by someone close. I spent more time listening than speaking, knowing the deepest pain wasn't in the amount lost, but in the fact that the person who took it was someone they once trusted most. One quiet weekend afternoon, I received an invitation to my grandmother's 55th birthday. In it was a note from my mother. "The whole family hopes you'll come." I sat staring at the card for a long time. My love for my grandmother made me want to go, but the memories of the cabin, the loan, and my mother's signature in Clara's case made me hesitate. I placed the card on my desk and sighed. I knew sooner or later the path I was on would lead me back to facing my mother. This time not just over personal disputes, but over everything I had uncovered and stored in my files. Outside my window, Seattle's lights began to glow. The reflection shone across the folder bearing the name Patricia Mitchell. I rested my hand on it, feeling like I was touching the past while bracing myself to open a new, stormy chapter. I knew this story wasn't over yet. That April, just after the spring rains let up, I got a call from my grandmother. Her voice was raspier than usual, but she tried to sound calm. "Lauren, you should come home this weekend. Something's not right." I pressed her for details, but she only said softly, "Come and you'll understand." I knew my grandmother was never one to speak in circles, so whatever she was avoiding must have been serious. And more than that, it happened to fall exactly on her 55th birthday, an event I had planned to skip to avoid running into Mom. But her words made me change my mind. On Friday afternoon, I drove back to Salem. The road from the city to my old hometown was familiar down to every curve, but my heart felt different. I arrived at Mom's house just as the last bit of daylight faded, holding a bouquet of white lilies and a gift wrapped in cream-colored paper. Mom opened the door, smiling as if nothing had happened. "You're here. Ethan's been around since yesterday. He's in the kitchen." She took the flowers and gift, nodding in thanks. I glanced around the living room. Everything was the same, yet there was an invisible chill hanging in the air, like dust left untouched for years. Ethan came out, beer bottle in hand, a brand new watch on his wrist. "You're back," he said with a hint of mockery in his tone. "Life in the big city must still be busy, huh?" "Busy, but good," I replied shortly. Dinner that night passed with Mom boasting about Ethan's achievements. He had just signed up for a programming course in Portland, lots of potential, and needs to focus on building his career. I listened, nodding occasionally, but my mind kept circling back to Grandma's words. Something's not right. The next morning, as I came downstairs, I found Mom and Ethan at the table, speaking low but loud enough for me to hear. "I think selling the cabin is the right move," Mom said. "But where the money goes, that needs to be discussed carefully." "I already have an idea," Ethan replied. "There's a land investment opportunity in Florida, promises to double the profit. But I can't put it under my name because of my credit history." Mom cut in. "Your sister's different. She's got steady income, excellent credit. If she agrees to be on the title, everything will go smoothly." I froze on the stairs. So this was the something not right. The cabin was already sold, but the money would be funneled into some shady project, and worse, I would be the one on the hook if it all collapsed. That afternoon, Mom invited me to go buy supplies for Grandma's birthday party. Once we pulled out of the neighborhood, she turned to me. "Sweetie, Ethan and I have a really good plan. Land in Florida. High return safe. But we need a little help from you." "What kind of help?" I asked, though I already knew. "We just need you to put it in your name. We'll handle all the costs and paperwork. You'll get a share of the profit. Why not put it under your name or Ethan's? I still have an old loan to pay off, and Ethan's credit score isn't high enough. You're the perfect choice." I looked straight at her. "You're asking me to risk my credit, my professional reputation, and my financial future for a project I haven't seen a single document on, with no idea who the developer even is? She gave a soft chuckle, as if I were overthinking it. Lauren, this is a chance for you to be part of a family project. You've always kept your distance. This is your chance to get closer. That phrase, family project, rang in my head like an alarm bell. I thought of the cabin, the $25,000 loan. All the times sharing meant only I paid the price. Later that day, I stopped by Grandma's cozy little home, filled with the smell of fresh-baked pie. When I told her about the conversation with Mom, she sighed. I had a feeling they'd try to pull you in. That cabin sold for over $80,000, and I know for a fact that money won't sit still if your mom and Ethan get their hands on it. Do you think I should just say no? Yes. She met my eyes steady and firm. You've built your own life. Don't let anyone take it from you. If you need to, say no. No explanation required. I held her hand, warmed by her resolve but uneasy inside. Saying no to Mom wasn't just turning down an investment, it was opening the door to a real confrontation. That night, after Grandma's birthday party ended, Mom pulled me out to the balcony. The laughter from the living room faded, leaving only the soft glow of yellow light on her face. Have you decided? She asked. This isn't the kind of opportunity you get every day. I won't join unless I see a clear plan. You don't trust me, her voice softened. Trusting you is what left me paying off a loan I never used, I said slowly. I won't make that mistake again. Her lips tightened, eyes turning cold. You always think I'm using you. If you want me to trust you, give me a reason. But you haven't done that yet. The air between us felt heavy, almost solid. I could hear the night wind slipping through the cracks in the glass door. When I returned to the living room, Ethan was bragging to relatives about some big project coming up. I watched quietly, torn between leaving right away and staying to see what they would try next. I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, as I was packing to head back to Seattle, Ethan walked in with a stack of papers. Here's a draft contract. Mom said you should look it over for peace of mind. I took it and flipped through a few pages. The contract clearly stated that I was the buyer and would bear all legal responsibility. The developer was a newly formed company with no completed projects. Ethan, do you even know what this means? Yes. It means we'll make money. I set the papers down. No. It means if anything goes wrong, I'm the only one who gets sued, chased for debts, and loses everything. He smirked. You're always so negative. Or maybe I'm just more realistic than you think. I stood, stacked the papers neatly, and handed them back. If you've ever been forced to choose between protecting yourself and going along with a family project, share your story in the comments. You never know. Your experience might be the wake-up call someone else needs. And if you want to see how this unfolds, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can follow me through whatever comes next. I didn't know exactly what fallout I'd face from Mom and Ethan after refusing, but I knew one thing for sure. I was ready for this fight. That night, I planned to sleep early to leave for Seattle in the morning, but voices downstairs made me stop. The clock on my nightstand was close to midnight. The house was quiet, lit only by the dim yellow glow from the living room. I could clearly hear Mom and Ethan, their tones low but urgent, as if discussing something they didn't want anyone else to hear. I quietly cracked my door open, stepping into the hallway and making my way to the staircase. Sitting on the fourth step from the top, where I knew the wood wouldn't creak, I held my breath and listened. Mom, I've already talked to the people in Florida. They agreed to hold the lot if we finish the paperwork this month. Ethan's voice was lower, tinged with anticipation. Good. But first we have to make sure Lauren signs. Without her on the title, this is over, Mom replied, her tone colder than the sweet demeanor she usually wore. I've tried to convince her, but she's still hung up on the cabin thing, Ethan said, a trace of annoyance. Hung up? Mom scoffed. She always thinks I'm using her. I raised her for years, gave her an education, and now when it's time to give back, she acts like a stranger. I heard a chair scrape. Then her voice dropped even lower, but still clear enough. If talking nicely doesn't work, we'll try something else. You still have a few personal loans unpaid, right? Yeah. About 15,000. Why? We'll tell Lauren that if she doesn't sign, I might consider letting her law firm know about the family's debt history. It doesn't have to be true, just enough to make her worry about her reputation. I felt my blood turn cold. Mom wasn't just pushing me into this deal. She was ready to use my career and reputation as leverage. I bent lower, holding my breath. Ethan hesitated. But what if she asks about profits, paperwork, the plan? She's not as naive as she used to be. It's always about emotions, Mom said firmly. Just remind her how much the family has sacrificed for her, and that this is her chance to finally do something for us. You know she still wants to be accepted. There was a pause, then Ethan chuckled softly. True. She's always wanted to prove she's part of this family. I sat there, every muscle tense. Memories came rushing back, being compared to my brother, the cut-down gifts, the day I discovered the cabin bought with a loan in my name. And now, they weren't just repeating history. They were planning something more calculated, exploiting the emotional weak spot they knew I still had. The sound of chairs moving and footsteps toward the stairs jolted me. I crept back to my room before they could see me. Closing the door, I leaned against it, my heart pounding, hands ice cold. There was no doubt now. This wasn't just a vague investment opportunity. This was a carefully laid trap, meant to pull me in one more time. I sat down on the edge of the bed, forcing myself to take a deep breath to clear my head. The words I just overheard still echoed in my ears. I knew that if I didn't act quickly, I'd be put in a corner. And this time they already had the whole script ready to trap me. I opened my laptop but hesitated. If I did something right now, they might realize I'd been eavesdropping. I needed time and evidence. More than that, I needed to get out of here as soon as possible. I neatly folded my clothes into my suitcase and left it by the door. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Monday morning I had a client meeting. That would be the perfect excuse to leave earlier than planned. When footsteps passed outside my room, I held my breath. My mother paused for a moment in front of the door, as if listening, then moved on. Only then did I dare exhale. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's cold stare and Ethan's smug smirk. I didn't recognize these people anymore. They weren't just after my money, they wanted control. They wanted me permanently indebted and dependent. The next morning, I got up early and went to the kitchen to make coffee as if nothing had happened. My mother was already there, slicing fruit for breakfast. Ethan was still asleep. She looked up and gave me a polite smile. "You're up early." "Yes. I have to get back to Seattle early today. I have something important tomorrow." "Oh, that's a shame. I was hoping we could talk more about the Florida property at lunch." "Mom, I've told you. I'm not getting involved unless I see a clear plan." She set the knife down and stared at me longer than usual. That wasn't the look of a mother. It was the look of someone calculating her next move. "You know, sometimes you can't just think about yourself," she said, her voice both sweet and threatening. "And sometimes," I replied softly, "thinking about yourself is the only thing that keeps you alive." The air between us felt heavier. She didn't respond, just turned back to her plate of fruit. I finished my coffee, carried my suitcase to the car, and glanced back at the house before getting in. It was full of memories, but now all I felt was the weight of being watched and used. This time leaving wouldn't be like before. They had crossed a line I couldn't ignore. I drove out of Salem on a foggy morning, the roadside trees dripping with night dew, my headlights cutting long yellow streaks across the wet asphalt. All the way back, My mind kept replaying every word I'd heard the night before. The way my mother and Ethan plotted each step to pressure me into signing, and that one line, "Just play on her need to be accepted," still rang in my ears. When I reached Seattle, I didn't go home. I went straight to the office. Monday would be packed with meetings, but I couldn't let this sit another day. I opened my laptop, created a new folder labeled Florida, and began writing down everything from memory. Times, locations, exact words, each person's tone. I'd handled enough cases like this to know details were everything if you wanted to protect yourself. Then I called a trusted colleague, Mark, a former criminal attorney who had switched to civil law. He called me back within minutes. "Lauren, I can tell from your voice this is serious. What's going on?" I gave him a short version, skipping emotions and focusing on facts. The cabin incident, the $25,000 loan, now the Florida property contract, and most importantly, last night's conversation. Mark was silent for a few seconds before speaking slowly. "Sounds like they're setting up a deliberate fraud scheme. And if you sign, whether you know it or not, you'll still be legally liable." "I know. That's why I want as much evidence as possible." "Do you have the contract?" "Ethan showed it to me, but I didn't take a photo," Mark advised. "Next time they show it, stay calm, pretend you're considering it, and find a way to copy it. If possible, record conversations. But check your state's laws to make sure it's legal." Talking to Mark only strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just a family matter anymore. This was about legal protection, about the line between freedom and being chained to a massive debt. The next day, I set up a separate email account not linked to any family devices to store and send Mark every piece of evidence I gathered. I also called my bank, where I had my condo mortgage, and asked them to place a fraud alert on my credit file. The banker sounded surprised, but when I said briefly that a family member might try to use my information for borrowing, she immediately processed it. 3 days later, my mother called. Her voice was so gentle it instantly put me on guard. "Honey, I've been thinking. Maybe you felt the Florida thing was a bit rushed, so I want to give you the chance to look into it more. You're planning to show me the paperwork?" "Yes." "Yes, come back this weekend. I'll have everything ready." I agreed, but I had a plan. This time I wouldn't come empty-handed. I brought a small recorder hidden in my coat pocket and an empty file folder to pretend I was taking notes. When I walked into her living room that Saturday, Ethan was already there with a laptop open. He slid a thick stack of papers toward me. "Here's the contract and investment plan. Read carefully." I scanned the pages. My name printed clearly on the first page as the sole buyer. Full payment and tax responsibility on me. The developer was a company registered less than 8 months ago. I pretended to frown, pulled out my phone to jot down figures, but actually hit record. "Has this company completed any projects yet?" "Yes." Ethan leaned back confidently. "Don't worry. It's land. It'll appreciate fast." My mother jumped in. "Lauren, trust me. I've talked to their lawyer. It's all legal." I looked at her. "Mom, I'm a lawyer. I need to see the land title, their business license, and financial statements." Her brows drew together. "Why do you always make everything so complicated? Family should trust each other." I smiled, keeping my tone gentle. "I trust family, but I also have to protect myself. You understand that." The meeting dragged on for over an hour. I kept asking questions, both to get information and to capture their voices and reactions. By the time I left, I had a copy of the contract, several printed partner emails, and most importantly, the full recorded conversation. On the way home, I sent everything to Mark. He called me back that evening. "Lauren, you did great. This contract is loaded with unfavorable terms, and if we can prove you were pressured or misled into signing, they could face criminal charges." Hearing that was both relieving and bitter. My own family now stood where I usually saw the people I protected my clients from. If you're watching this and have ever been forced to choose between family loyalty and your own safety, share your experience in the comments. I truly want to hear your stories. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, rain tapping against the window. The Florida contract lay on the table, proof that my boundaries with them could no longer be just verbal. I knew I'd stepped into a battle, and this time I wouldn't back down. The time for a direct confrontation had come. After Mark reviewed the contract and recording, I spent the night assembling a case file, organizing every piece of evidence in chronological order. From the cabin incident, the $25,000 loan, the late-night conversation in Salem, to last weekend's contract presentation. I wasn't going to let this slip into vague back-and-forth arguments. If they wanted to trap me in a premeditated scheme, I was going to flip the table on them. The next day I called my mother. Her tone was calm. "Hello, Lauren. Have you decided yet?" "Mom, we need to talk. You and Ethan. And I want it at my office tomorrow afternoon." She hesitated. "Your office? Why there?" "Because that's where I have all the necessary documents. If we're discussing a contract, we're going to do it like adults, transparent and clear." After a pause, she agreed, but I could hear the caution in her voice. The next afternoon, I sat at my desk with a thick file in front of me, a discreet recorder in the drawer, and Mark in the chair beside me as my support advisor. I wanted this to have a semi-formal setting, so no one could say, "It's just family, don't make a big deal." The door opened. My mother walked in first, Ethan behind her. Both looked uneasy when they saw Mark. "Who's this?" Ethan asked, frowning. "My colleague," I answered. "He's here to make sure we all understand every term and responsibility before signing anything." My mother sat down, placed her purse by the chair, and gave me a probing look. "Let's make this quick. I don't have much time." I opened the Florida contract. "This is the contract you want me to sign. I've reviewed it and found it entirely against my interest. I'm the only one named, fully responsible for the finances and legal obligations. The partner company has no completed projects and hasn't even been in business for a full year." Ethan cut in sharply. "But the profits?" "Profits?" I raised an eyebrow. "No one can guarantee that. And I have a recording of the conversation in Salem where Mom clearly said that if I didn't sign, she'd find a way to pressure me by threatening my reputation." The air in the room instantly thickened. Mom straightened her back, her eyes turning icy. "You recorded me?" "Yes. And that's not all," I continued. "I also have a recording from last week's meeting where both of you admitted the cabin and the $25,000 loan were entirely Mom's decision, without my real consent." Mark spoke up gently. "From a legal standpoint, what Lauren has presented is enough to show signs of coercion and financial abuse within the family. If necessary, we can forward all of this to the authorities." Ethan shot to his feet. "You're going to sue your own family." "I'm going to protect myself," I said firmly. "I've spent enough years paying for decisions I never agreed to. That ends today." Mom looked at me, lips pressed tight, trying to keep her voice steady. "You think this is the way to solve things? Family isn't a courtroom. But when family acts like people willing to put me at legal and financial risk, I have no choice but to treat it like a courtroom," I replied, each word deliberate. "From now on, anything involving money or property will go through attorneys and be fully documented." Ethan let out a mocking laugh. "You always think you're smarter than everyone else." "It's not about being smarter," I met his gaze. "It's about not being naive anymore." Mark slid an envelope toward my mother. "This is an official notice from Lauren. It states she's declining to sign the Florida contract, demands an immediate stop to any use of her name or personal information for financial purposes, and warns that any violation will be met with legal action." Mom didn't take the envelope right away. She stared at it, then at me, as if weighing something. But then she turned to Ethan. "Let's go." They stood and walked out without another word. The door shut, leaving behind a heavy silence. I leaned back in my chair, feeling like I'd just stepped out of a closed-door hearing. That evening, I started getting a stream of texts from relatives, all accusing me of overreacting and embarrassing the family. Clearly, Mom had wasted no time spinning the story her way. I read them all but didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded them to Mark for the record. The next day, Mark called. "You did the right thing. Now they know you're serious and you have proof. This will make them think twice." I knew he was right. But inside, there was still a quiet sadness. No one wants to turn their own family into a legal case. Yet sometimes, the only thing standing between your safety and your destruction is the willingness to do exactly that. I looked out the window at the Seattle night rain, the dim streetlights reflecting on the wet pavement. Inside me was exhaustion but also relief. At least I had spoken plainly, set boundaries, and defended myself, something I had put off for far too many years. After that tense office meeting, I thought things would calm down. But just a few days later, another undercurrent started to swell. A longtime friend called to tell me Mom and Ethan were whispering to people in the community, hinting that I was deep in debt and could go bankrupt any day. The story spread like a winter wind, and I knew exactly what they were aiming for, damaging my credibility so I'd be isolated. I decided not to stay silent. In business, reputation isn't just an asset, it's oxygen. Once you let someone else control the narrative, you lose the right to define yourself. I opened my laptop and drafted a short, clear statement for the relevant parties, confirming I had no debts, attaching a brief financial report and a verification letter from my bank. No attacks, just complete transparency. That afternoon I called Mark. They've started using their usual tactic: smear you, then force you onto the defensive. "This time you're not just defending," he said in a low voice. "You've hit back. And they're going to realize you're not the quiet target anymore." The very next day, I attended a startup seminar downtown. The moment I walked in, several people came up to shake my hand and say they'd read my statement. They praised my directness, and some even offered to collaborate on new projects. I realized that sometimes, the best way to kill a rumor is to shine a brighter light than it can survive. But I also knew the other side wouldn't back down easily. That evening, as I was making tea, my phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice was like steel. "You think doing that will make people believe you more?" "No, Mom. I did it so the people who actually matter will know the truth. You're cutting yourself off from the family." I took a slow breath. "Mom, it's the repeated actions from you and Ethan that pushed me away. I'm just protecting my boundaries." She didn't answer, just hung up. I sat there for a few minutes, listening to the soft patter of Seattle rain against the porch. I knew every conversation like this was another cut into the already frayed thread between us. But I also knew that without consistency, I'd slip right back into the old cycle. That weekend, Mark invited me to a small gathering with friends from the industry. In the warm, cozy space of an old cafe, I shared my story calmly. No embellishment, no avoidance. Some listened intently, some asked questions, and a few admitted they'd gone through similar things. A middle-aged woman sitting beside me took my hand and said softly, "Thank you for daring to tell it. Hearing your story makes me feel less alone." Her words stopped me for a moment. All this time I thought I was fighting only for myself. But it turned out, every time I told the truth, I was opening a door for someone else to step out of their own darkness. That night, back at my desk, I looked at the list of projects I'd been working on. An idea flashed in my mind: hosting a community session on personal finance management and legal rights within families. Not just to tell my story, but to help others realize they have the right to protect themselves, even if the person on the other side shares their blood. I smiled, feeling lighter. This road wouldn't be easy, but step by step, I was reclaiming ownership of my life. And if you're listening to this story, Don't be afraid to share how it makes you feel. Hit like so I know you also believe every one of us deserves to be protected and respected. That morning I woke earlier than usual. The first light of day streamed through my window, soft and gentle. I brewed a cup of black coffee, sat at my desk, and reviewed the materials for the weekend's community event. This would be my first time hosting something not for business, but purely to share and help. Mark called as I was going over my presentation. "Are you ready?" he asked warmly. "I think so. I'm just a little nervous. Not about speaking in public, but about whether I can truly convey what I mean." "You will," he assured me. "You've lived it, and you speak from real experience. People will hear you with their hearts." His words steadied me. All week, I'd been busy securing the venue, printing handouts, and arranging the space to feel warm and safe, like a friend's living room rather than a cold hall. On the day of the event, a light Seattle rain fell. I wore a deep blue dress and my favorite wool shawl. As I walked into the room, I saw the seats already half full, with more people coming in. Some familiar faces, some strangers. I opened the session by sharing part of my story, briefly, without sinking into heavy detail. I spoke about the pain of having your own family use blood ties as a tool for control. About the times I had to choose between staying silent for the sake of peace and speaking up to save myself. Looking out, I saw eyes filled with empathy. Some nodding, some quietly sighing. A woman in her 50s raised her hand, her voice trembling. I used to think I had to endure because it was family. But then I realized if I keep enduring, I'm teaching my children they don't deserve respect. The room fell silent for a beat before a few voices murmured in agreement. I smiled, thanked her for sharing, and reminded everyone that real change starts with redefining boundaries and self-worth. Midway through, I moved into small group discussions. Each table tackled scenarios. What to do when shared property is decided without your consent. How to handle defamation within your community. How to rebuild credibility after being smeared. I walked around listening, offering thoughts. Sometimes I simply rested a hand on someone's shoulder when they choked up, just so they knew they weren't alone. When I returned to the front, I noticed Ethan standing at the back. He didn't speak, just watched, eyes scanning the room. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady and finished my part. He left before it ended, without a word. I wasn't sure if he came out of curiosity or to see how much I had told. But this time I wasn't afraid. As people left, an older man approached, gripping my hand, his eyes glistening. "You've done what many people my age wish they'd had the courage to do." "Thank you." I nodded, feeling warmth spread through me. That night, alone in my apartment, I sat at the kitchen table, opened my notebook and wrote. I realized this journey wasn't just about confronting Mom or Ethan. It was about learning to stand firm, even when the very people who should have had my back were the ones pushing me down. I wrote, "I may have lost a family, but I've found myself. And maybe in doing so, I'm building a new kind of family, not bound by blood, but by respect and trust." Outside the window, the rain was still falling, but this time it didn't feel cold. It felt like it was washing away old layers of dust, leaving space for something better to come in. Maybe everyone sitting here can see a piece of their own story in what I've just shared. Some will choose silence to keep the peace, while others will choose to step forward, face it, and redraw the boundaries. I believe there's no absolute right or wrong answer, only what fits each person's journey and courage. I truly want to hear your perspective. If you were in that situation, what would you do? Would you stay silent and accept it, or stand up for yourself, knowing it might fracture the relationship? Your thoughts might be the encouragement someone needs to find their way out of this cycle of hurt. If what I've shared has touched you in some way, please like and share to support this story. And if you want to keep joining me for more stories full of hidden corners but also hope, about family, about resistance and healing, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss what's next. Each story isn't just for listening, but for us to reflect on and find ways to live true to ourselves. See you in the next story.